Hey, Southern Hills family. I want to take a few minutes today to share with you some fantastic news as we are coming to the end of both phases 1 and 2 of our long-range plan. And then, because we are physically separated, and we have been for quite some time, I want to take just a few moments and give you a virtual tour of not only the ministry center, but of the new adult space that we are in the process of putting together right now. So we're excited, and I'm so grateful to our AV team. They're standing behind the camera right now, but they've given up some time today to help us to be able to do this so that you can experience some of this, even though we can't have everybody together in this space right now. I want you to know that wherever you are and whenever you are, no matter when you are encountering any of our videos, our studies, our worship services, any of the morning devotion videos, no matter when you're doing that, I want you to know that we are upholding you in prayer. We miss you terribly, and we cannot wait until the right time and the safest time for us to come back together. Our leadership team has been talking about that, and in fact has been meeting frequently to diligently discuss how we can come back together when it's the right time to come back together. In fact, we've been meeting via a Zoom meeting every Wednesday throughout the pandemic. That in and of itself has been a new normal for us. You've probably heard me talking about that quite a bit, just as everybody all over the world is talking about how we're all stepping into a new normal. Recently, I preached a sermon about doors of life, those moments of transition that sometimes we see coming. We know sometimes there are major transition points ahead of us. We know they're going to happen, like graduating from high school or moving into retirement, things that we know are going to be there, and we have some time to prepare. And then other times, there are transition points that are dropped right in front of us, and we have to walk through them, and we didn't see them coming and don't particularly want to have to do it. That's what this pandemic has been for all of us around the world. We're all having to step into a new normal, whether we want to be or not. So here at Southern Hills, we've been talking quite a bit about what that new normal can and should look like. We've considered a number of different things. We've considered the possibility that when we come back and are worshiping together on our physical campus, we may not have all of our membership come back at the same time. We may experience that some people, through an abundance of caution, choose to continue to quarantine for a time. We may see that people come back in different stages to different kinds of activities, churches being among those. And so as we have talked together, and as we've stepped into our new normal, and friends, it has been, when we first started Zoom meetings as a leadership team, we had the best time trying to figure out how to get faces and sound to show up at the same time on the same screens. But we got there. We've actually become accustomed to it, and I don't know that I would say that we're enjoying it, but we've learned some things. We've learned some things that all of us are learning as we go through this. And one of those things is we could be meeting weekly anyway. There's so much that we're able to accomplish in sometimes a very short weekly meeting. Some of those meetings have been 20 minutes long. Others have been 3.5 hours, depending on what we need to discuss. We've all been learning things like that. We've been taking great steps to try to help keep our family as connected as it can be. Our congregational care team has reached out to every member of the church now more than once. So if you haven't received a call yet, that's because we don't have the correct information for you. We would love to have that. Please contact us at the church office and give us your contact information. We have been reaching out. We've even made it through that list 2 and are into our 3rd time now. And as we've talked about that, one of the questions we've asked is, why weren't we doing this before? We've been offering morning devotions, and that's been a blast. And when I look at those, I'm always surprised by the number of people who participate. I don't know why, I just am. It just blows my mind. And as I was talking with our staff and our leadership about that, one of the questions that we've all asked is, why weren't we doing this before? There's so many things that we're stepping into, so many things we're learning right now, and so many new opportunities to connect with one another, and we're looking at those opportunities saying, why haven't we been doing this before? So some of those things will continue. We're going to make it our regular practice going forward that our congregational care team reaches out by telephone to all of our members at least once a month, just to check in, to find out how your soul is, to find out what ways, if any, we can help or be in prayer together with you. That will continue. Morning devotions will continue. And a number of other things will continue when we are able to come back together. All right, so we've been talking about that. What will that look like? When we finally can come back together, how will we do it? Because our normal will be different. This pandemic has changed so many things. You've read all the articles. You've been paying attention to the news. You've read through your social media feeds, so you know that all kinds of things are different. You're reading the same stories I am from the same sources about how air quality has improved dramatically, about how people are treating one another in a nicer and in kinder ways. I trust, hope, and pray that those things are going to continue. When we come back, we will be stepping into a new normal right along with the rest of the world. One of the questions I'm most frequently asked is when. I was discussing that today with some members of our construction team who attend different United Methodist churches in the metro. I said, have you given any thought to when you're going to open your physical campus again? And I said, oh, absolutely. That's one of the things we've been thinking and talking about almost incessantly. And they said, well, what have you decided to do? And I said, we haven't yet. We're going to wait until we hear from local and state and federal authorities, until we hear from the leaders within our organizational church, and until we hear from experts who know what they're talking about when it comes to diseases, viruses, and pandemics. When we hear that it's safe to open again, then we will come together with our leadership team, and we'll have a discussion about what we're hearing and about the guidance we're receiving. We'll pray together, we'll discern together, and we'll come up with a plan about when we feel like it's safe for Southern Hills to open up again. And as we make those decisions, we'll make sure to communicate those with you in via every communication method that is available to us. So the short answer is, we don't know. Today I was asked, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that you'll open up sometime in May, or will you open up at all this year? Friends, as of right now, we don't know. We're going to listen to the people who know what they're talking about, together with God, with the guidance of the Holy Spirit, and as a community of faith, we will make the next right choice as best we understand it when we have a choice to make. We have, however, been able to talk about how we will come back. As I mentioned before, we've talked about all kinds of things. What will the landscape of the world, of our country, of Oklahoma City look like when we finally can come back together? It really is our expectation that some of our high-risk members will not feel comfortable being in large group settings right away. We understand that there may be a phased opening of society when it's safe to do so. We may see people gathering in groups of 50 instead of groups of 10, observing social distancing, spacing rules. We may see all kinds of things. Because it's our expectation that in particular, many of our high-risk members may not feel safe being in large groups of people. And I completely understand, as does our entire leadership team. We've talked about that, we're all sympathetic to that, and we all want to do as much as we can to keep our congregants and our church members safe. So as we've talked about that, we've said, well, maybe our new normal looks like having one service for a time. We've been streaming one service now. For a while, we streamed something traditional. Then we began to stream something a bit more casual. We'll continue forward with something that is a bit more casual here for the foreseeable future. And when we come back together, we'll come back together with one service. As we talked about that, and our last meeting that we had as a leadership team about that meeting was 3.5 hours long. And as we discussed that together, we had a number of questions that we asked of ourselves and that we asked of the Holy Spirit. We're all prayerfully discerning, looking for the leading of the Spirit as we move forward. But we've asked all kinds of questions. Well, does that mean we'll only ever have one service? We talked about that. We prayed about that. And we decided that when there's a need for a second service, we'll talk about the best kind of second service to start. When should it be? What should it look like? How should we put it together? We'll sit down and we'll bring the input of our community, of the people who are interested and are comprising the need for another service when that day comes. We'll make the next right choice as best we can. So initially, we'll come back with one service. It had always been a part of our long-range plan that at the end of the second phase, the current sanctuary, what was actually consecrated as Ray Owen Chapel back in the 1960s, would become a great hall. Eventually, it would become a great hall with an entryway that opened up out toward Penn Avenue right behind me. And at that time, according to the long-range plan, all of our worship would move into the ministry center as we raised money for and built our new sanctuary. You know, when I came here to Southern Hills 4 years ago, I was presented with this long-range plan that had been developed many years before I arrived, almost 6 years, in fact, before I got here. The church had made great progress, but our leaders expressed to me a joint frustration in how the process and the progress had slowed over time. By 2019, we were to have been through phase 2 of a 3-phased long-range plan. And yet, by the time I arrived, phase 1 had yet to get off the ground. We had just finished here at the time a 3-year capital campaign where members gave sacrificially and generously to fund the first phase of a project that the church had spent a very long time praying and talking about. That capital campaign had raised about 1/3 of the cost of the phase 1 ministry center. We had a number of meetings. We had a number of conversations. We frequently talked about how every organization is perfectly designed to get the results that it's getting. So, our question became, where do we want to go? Who do we want to be? How do we need to design our organization in order to get the kinds of results that we want? And we began together to make changes. We started to change how we did what we did. We started to change our leadership structure. We started to change our meeting structure. And slowly over time, we've watched and you've watched as those changes have had a real effect on not only our physical campus, but on our virtual campus, on our business operational processes. We implemented Kids Academy as a part of that reorganization for many reasons, not the least of which is that it is a valuable ministry endeavor. As we entered into this pandemic, the Department of Human Services contacted us, as they did many other child care providers. We expected them to ask us to close our child care program, and instead they said the opposite. They said, please, 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 if you're able, keep it open. Because those people who are essential workers don't have others to watch their children for them, and therefore can't go to work unless you stay here and provide child care. So we've continued to do that. Last year in 2019, though it was only open for half the year, our Kids Academy comprised 34% of our total revenue, our total income for 2019. As we move into 2020 this year, it currently comprises almost 47% of our total income. We're taking a look at new endeavors that combine ministry with opportunities to do business practices differently. One of those endeavors is to open an elder care facility. An elder care facility, if you're not familiar with that, and there are many throughout the metro, we've been blessed to learn from them as we've moved forward in this process, is almost like a daycare center for older adults who may live with family members, but their family members need to work, and those adults, those older adults, need someone to be with them all day. So, very much like that, we'll be looking later this year at opening up an elder care facility here at Southern Hills. That gets us closer toward our goal of devoting 100% of congregational giving to mission and outreach. When I first proposed that to our leadership team, I was nervous about bringing it up. And when I did, there were more than a few chuckles and surprised looks around that leadership table. In fact, when I brought it up at the time, I remember thinking to myself, I believe this is possible, but how do we get there? Friends, if we continue on the path that we're on, we will be there, perhaps within about 5 years. So there are a number of things changing. As we looked over this long-range plan when I first arrived at Southern Hills, and we began to talk about how some parts of it had stalled out and how we wanted to pick up that progress again, we started to reorganize so that our organization would be designed to get the results that we were seeking. I am so happy to be able to stand up before you today and tell you that we are at the point of substantial completion of both phases 1 and 2 of our original long-range plan. Now, that long-range plan has changed over time, as long-range plans do. The building has been redesigned to meet our needs today and also in accordance with what we can afford to do. Our Phase 2 campus remodel was redesigned in order to meet the needs of today and also to fit in with what we can afford to do. But as we come to the end of Phases 1 and 2, it is exciting to think about stepping into Phase 3 just 1 year after we would originally have hoped to be there. So here's what that means. As we began to talk, as your leadership team began to talk about what that looked like and what it would look like, the original long-range plan came up, and we said, in this long-range plan, it was always our plan to move worship into the ministry center. What if we did that? If we moved worship into the ministry center, could we go ahead and follow through with that part of the plan to convert Ray Owen Chapel into a great hall that would then be called Ray Owen, and actually I believe going forward it would be Bishop Ray Owen. Ray Owen, who was the founding pastor of Southern Hills, was elected as a bishop in the United Methodist Church before he retired. And so Ray Owen Chapel would become Bishop Ray Owen Hall. So they began to talk about that. That meeting was a very long meeting. We talked about numerous possibilities. Your leaders prayerfully discerned together what the future could look like. And ultimately, as they sat in Owen Hall, they looked around and said, we can convert this to a great hall, and if we do, then we have space sufficient for all of our Sunday school classes to meet in one place. Ray Owen Hall can build on the legacy of changing hearts and lives that has been built in this space. We can continue with that as the great hall itself becomes a place for adult Sunday school classes to gather before and after Sunday school, to sit down and sip on some coffee and have some donuts and catch up and have fellowship about the week that has passed. And I don't know about you, but when it is safe to do that again, that sounds like such a good time to me. We can use it for meetings, United Methodist men and women, for Bible studies. One of the ideas that came up was to add a catered breakfast to an hour in the Scriptures so that we can enjoy a breakfast time and a time of fellowship as we meet together. Have meetings of our leadership board, funeral dinners, other banquets in that space, which is already so very well equipped for presentations and talks and all sorts of activities. So they talked through that. They talked through it for a very long time and came to the conclusion that that was a wonderful way forward for us at Southern Hills. And so we've been taking steps to make that transition together. And as we do, we've come to the place where I cannot wait to give you a tour of what Owen Hall can look like when we come back together and open our physical campus again. So today, I want to ask you to join with me in a few things. I'm going to ask you to pray with me in just a moment, and then we're going to take a tour together. I'm going to give you a tour of Owen Hall. I'm going to give you a tour of the Ministry Center, and I'm going to spend some time explaining how the different components of those things work. Before we do, let me tell you what the schedule is that was decided upon by your leadership team. When we can open the physical campus, we will have a couple of weeks where we only have worship. Nothing else, just worship. We'll worship together at 10:30 in the morning. We have been streaming our services at 10 o'clock. But in talking through the schedule, there were some good ideas expressed that allow for time and allow for the congregation community to stay together. One of the great things about this new normal is that by coming back with one service, we have the opportunity to keep our entire congregational family together. People no longer have to try to decide whether they will go to church during one time or another time. Sunday school classes no longer have to split or consider where they will go and when they will go. So we're looking forward to those opportunities. You may be thinking to yourself, can the ministry center hold that many people? I can't wait to take you in there. We have seating capacity right now for 330. We could fit 600 people in there, but we have 330 chairs. So yes, the capacity in there is tremendous. It's going to be a wonderful opportunity for us to worship as a family. What will that worship service look like? Initially, very much like our 1045 service right now, or what has been our 1045 service. Something very casual. Something that leans a little bit modern. It'll be led by a praise team and will also incorporate our choir. Our music director, along with our leadership team, is right now trying to decide what that incorporation looks like. We'll have a few traditional elements, some newer songs, and an occasional old favorite. But it'll be a good time. We'll also come back together with a Wednesday night service. So we'll have a Sunday morning service at 10:30, a Wednesday night service preceded by a meal at 6:15. Sunday mornings, a few weeks after we open, will once again include Sunday school. The plan that the leadership team has designed would find Sunday school meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning, followed by worship at 10:30. That gives our Sunday school classes time to gather ahead of Sunday school and time to gather afterwards as well. So there's time to transition from the education building into the worship building. We've also discussed the possibility of having a short 30-minute prayer service at 8:15 in the morning in Owen Hall. That discussion is still ongoing. And as we continue to make progress, we'll continue to keep you updated. But I want to ask you to join with me. I want to ask you to join with me in upholding our entire church family in prayer and also our leaders. I am so proud to be associated with a group of leaders like this who have taken things so seriously, who have been diligent about discerning, about praying and seeking the guidance of the Holy Spirit, who, like all leaders right now, whether they be religious leaders or civic leaders, have so much to balance as we step into what is for so many of us uncharted territory. I have been so proud of the way our leaders have handled those decisions in trying to make the best decisions that they can make, in trying to do the next right thing, even though a transition point, a door of life was dropped in front of them and they had no choice about walking through it. When your leaders agreed, after being elected by you, to serve as leaders in our church, they had no idea that they would be serving during the greatest pandemic in 100 years. I, for one, have been inspired and so proud to be associated with them, to watch them talk and discuss and make decisions. I want to encourage you to stand by them together with me, to stand by them as we step into a new normal together, to stand by the decisions that our leaders have made together, and to uphold them in prayer. As I watch our civic leaders try to make decisions balancing the safety of our citizens with the need to reopen the economy, I am so grateful that I am not the one making those decisions. Your leaders here in this church are doing the best job they can to make the next right choice. So let's step into that future together. And let's take just a few minutes to look at some of the progress that's been made. Would you pray with me? God, I want to ask you to uphold each and every member of our church, wherever they may be and whenever they may be watching this. I want to ask you, God, to uphold those who are struggling with fear and anxiety, those who are struggling with illness, those who are struggling with uncertainty, those who are struggling with grief, and those who are understanding all the difficulty that comes from living through this doorway that we're walking through together. But you are a God of hope. You are a God who time and again breaks chains. You are a God who time and again leads us to freedom. You are a God who time and again brings about a peace that passes all understanding. You are a God who has led your people through transitions countless times before. You are a God who promises not only to walk through these doors with us, but that you are already on the other side, preparing the way. We offer this with praise and thanksgiving in your holy name. Amen. Friends, let's take a tour together. Hey friends, welcome to Bishop Ray Owen Hall. I'm excited to just take a moment and share with you a little bit about what this space is going to look like. Now before I do, I didn't know this till a couple of our founding members told me, but there is a plaque right outside of the door that says that this has been dedicated as Ray Owen Chapel. So we're going to take that plaque and we're going to move it to where it's right outside these doors so that people will actually see it when they walk into Owen Hall. We're excited about that. Omer Floyd right now is working on signage. So there will be a sign right above the doorways on the outside that says Owen Hall. And on the opposite side of the Welcome Center, there will be a sign that says Children and Family Ministries. So I'm excited about that. Thank you so much to Omer Floyd, always does great work for the church. So this is Owen Hall. This is a space that will be used for so many different things. Our Sunday school classes, our adult classes, will have a place to gather before and after Sunday school. Our groups, United Methodist men and women, all of our Bible studies who want to can have access to this space, which is already so well equipped for formal dinners and nice presentations and studies and opportunities for adults to gather. As much as we love our children in Southern Hills, it is also nice for adults to have a place to gather where we don't have children running through all the time. And so we have an opportunity to have that place here. Around the perimeter, each room is set up as a classroom for one of our Sunday school classes. Now, I suspect they'll probably change a little bit as the classes get into those rooms and make them their own. But we're going to take a minute and show you around this space so that you can get a better feel for what it looks like. Hey friends, welcome to the Ministry Center. This building is the result of years of planning and fundraising and prayer and a lot of hard work and determination by a lot of people. So I can't wait to show it to you. I can't wait to worship in here with you, to play sports together with you, and to do a whole lot of eating in this space. So let me give you a quick tour so that you can know what is yet to come. Now, Friday of this week, we have what is called our final punch-out walk. We're almost through all of the inspections. Most of the work is done. We should be able to take possession of the building within the next couple of weeks, which means that we will very likely be streaming our worship services out of this space before we are able to come back together physically here at Southern Hills. Off to my right, your left, is where our AV booth will go. There's already a lot of power given to that place. We're going to build a booth there. We're going to put all kinds of cool things there, not the least of which are a couple of long throw projectors that will be mounted on this wall and project all the way over on the opposite wall. So let me tell you what that's going to look like a little bit. Here in our main worship space, the front of our worship space will actually be right here. And so all of the congregational chairs, all 330 of them, will be out in this space out here. We are going to have a wooden stage that comes out from the back wall, a large wooden stage that is retractable so that it can be out of the way when we play basketball games. It also gives us a barrier between the basketball court and anything that is still on the worship stage. On the sides of the stage, we'll have 8-foot walls that start about here and also one on the other side, and go out at a little bit of an angle so that there is a place for people, be they the praise team or children during our children's plays and pageants, there's a place for them to get ready to come on stage away from where the rest of the congregation is sitting. And then this I'm so excited about. Next week, our construction company will begin putting up reclaimed wood on the worship walls. From this beam over here to this beam over here, everything in between will be reclaimed wood from a barn that was disassembled right here in Oklahoma. We've seen the wood. It is beautiful. That is a trend that is popular in churches right now and in other venues as well. It's going to look fantastic. So we're excited about that. There will be plenty of space for the praise team that Peter is working on putting together right now, also for our choir to come in and help lead us in worship, and also for a whole lot of teaching and prayer to happen together. All right, friends, I want to take just a minute and take you into the kitchen because I know that so many of you have been excited about that for so long. All right, friends, before we get into the kitchen, let me show you the entryway. This is the main entryway for the ministry center. It opens up to Penn Avenue, which is right out here. There's some really pretty landscaping in front of the ministry center. I can't wait for you to see it. But this is our main entryway. The kitchen is to my right, and to my left, we have a mechanical room that you won't ever need to be in, but we also have a unisex restroom that is right here. We put that restroom in. Some of our leaders had the foresight to suggest that, so that when we're working in the kitchen, we don't have to walk all the way to the other side of the building to get to the restrooms. We'll take you in there in just a minute. It'll be the only time in your history where you've gotten to go into the restroom with the whole congregation at the same time. But we want you to know that that's here. Let's take a minute and go into the kitchen. I can't wait for you to see it. All right, so here we are in the kitchen. I got to be honest, the first time I set foot in this space, it was still being constructed, and I thought, yeah, it's a little bigger than the other kitchen, but is it really going to be that much bigger? Then they got everything in it, and I'm telling you, there is so much space in here, we could have half the congregation cooking at the same time, which is a terrible idea. So let me walk you around here and show you kind of where everything is, all right? So starting over here, we have obviously our two ovens. We have a double oven. We had some representatives from our United Methodist Women who gave us some great advice about the dimensions that these two ovens should be. So they're included here. Right on the other side of this wall will be our ice machine. And then directly behind me will be our double refrigerator. That's what that space right there is for. Then right over here we have a gas range. We're super excited about that. It's a commercial range. There are 6 gas burners on it. And we have a commercial hood that has a fire suppression system in it. Also very excited about that. As we move over here, we have ordered a brand new commercial dishwasher that is still being shipped to us, but it's going to go right here where I'm standing. And right next to it is a commercial grade 3-compartment sink for washing dishes in. On the wall that leads into the main space of the ministry center, there are 2 windows that have shields that lower mechanically. And then we have another one facing the lobby area. That way, if we need to close those while basketballs are flying around, we don't have to worry about basketballs coming into the kitchen as well. All right, I want to take you out and let you see our restrooms because they also function as a FEMA-rated storm shelter. All right, so I've been joking about how we're about to take the whole congregation into the restrooms, but the truth is that we built these restrooms to house our congregation because this restroom space is a FEMA-rated storm shelter rated for an F5 tornado. You can't see them from where you are, but even within the walls, there are ventilation systems that are designed to kick on if the rest of the building blows away so that air can be provided to this space while we're waiting for rescue. The doors lock down in multiple ways, and the building is extremely secure. But it's also a restroom. So let me show you around there. Right here we have our sinks, our faucets. All of the lights in this space are on motion sensors. So any room you walk into in the ministry center will have lights that come on automatically as you walk in. So we have our sinks right here. We have water fountains in this dual use space, and our water fountains even have bottle filling stations at them, which I didn't know we had, and I was ridiculously excited about when I discovered. All right, I'm going to take you around one of the sides. The two sides are pretty similar. So let's go this side. This is going into our women's half of the restroom. There's a long route around here because, we want to give you lots of separation. And then in the restroom, we have a number of restroom type things. So our capacity here is actually 81 people. We can fit 81 people by code into this space. But as I'm sure you're well aware, if, God forbid, there were a storm, we would fit as many people in here as we possibly can. Well, that's the 25-cent tour of the Ministry Center. I'm so excited to share it with you. I remember when I was a child listening to my father talk to his congregation once. He was talking to them about legacy. And he said, the building we're in right now, this building was provided to us by the people who came before us. What is it that we will leave to the next generation of Christians who will serve and live and worship here? Our main campus was lovingly provided for us by a previous generation. I can imagine, though he's not here anymore, that if Bishop Owen were here, he would stand before us and speak to us about how grateful he is. Bishop Owen was an innovator. He started a new campus, a contemporary campus for its time, in a growing part of the metro. I have no doubt he'd stand before you today and say, look at this. Look at what you have added to what we started. Our generation provided a legacy to you, but you have built on that legacy to provide for the next generation what it needs to be successful. I, for one, am so grateful to be able to be a part of a church like that. God bless you wherever you are, and know that we can't wait to see you again in person.